Yeah, sorry. Of course, trying to get onto a tech talk. I'd have some tech issues.
But see, you missed the intro I gave you. Listen, I
Oh
need, you know,
man, it was probably way too kind and highly elaborated.
I'm just saying it was award show worthy. That's all I'm saying.
Wonderful. Do you guys kind of want me to launch right into it, or do you have what's the format for tonight?
Well, usually what we do is, and I'll let the format be completely up to you. Usually, you could go through your presentation and we say for Q&A at the end. I don't know how much engagement you want. I read your bio from the website just so that they have a good idea of who you are. And then I said a few personal anecdotes. But so you are, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Okay, cool. So I am going to kind of go through a little bit, maybe in detail of my tech life and I'm basically going to use myself as a case study for what I call, think like an innovator, act like an entrepreneur. So let me share my deck. This is not software related, so there'll be very little reference to coding, although there was a lot of coding actually involved. I could have actually maybe talked about, but coding was kind of an assisted thing to all this. And let me see. Can you all see if I go on the slideshow? Okay, perfect.
We
Awesome.
can.
So, I kind of coined this statement, think like an innovator, act like an entrepreneur, especially for those of us that come out of the tech space, whether that's coding, whether that's hardware. In my case, implants, not necessarily computer hardware, but physical devices that get implanted inside the body. And I found that there were some similarities in how us innovators think. And also there's some, you know, uh, there's some valleys we can fall into if we stay in the thinking like an innovator and carry that into the acting like an innovator. And at the same time, there are some great ways that entrepreneurs think, right? But it's actually the actions of an entrepreneur that, in my opinion, can be most valuable in terms of making impact and change in the world. And entrepreneurs basically think about money. So, that's good for building wealth. But so here's kind of where, I really start this conversation, which is that, innovators, we fall in love with our innovation. So I'm sure many of the people on this call are, building all kinds of things. Some things you might be building at work, some things might be you're doing just for hobbies. I have a nephew who's a teenager now, but my gosh, since he was like 5, he was, on the computer coding and doing this and doing that. I mean, it's so second nature to them. He's not even in college yet and knows every coding language I ever learned pre-grad school. Just for fun. So, whether you start young, whether you picked it up later in life, a lot of people, hey, didn't know anything about coding and then just said, hey, let me go check out and see what it is. You might be older, right? You might be, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50, people in their 60s and 70s picking up coding. But I think one reason that people launch into it is this ability to innovate, to think of something new and creative, create it, and then see it working. So innovators, we tend to fall in love with that innovation, and we'll just keep innovating just for the sake of innovation, right? You build a computer program. Okay, that was cool. Now I'm on to the next one, right? And it's really just about seeing what all the kind of cool, great, innovative things you can do. Does it have a purpose? Maybe, maybe not, right? Like the innovative part of your brain is like, purpose, I get it, should have some purpose, right? I mean, should have some value to humanity. But at the same time, it's not why I'm sitting up till 4 o'clock in the morning, back hunched over coding a lot of the times. It's because I love what I do or because I'm trying to be innovative. I'm not really thinking about like the end purpose all the time. So on the flip side, you have entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs, they fall in love with making money. I mean, entrepreneur, your whole thought process is to make money. and they'll keep making money and figuring out how to make, money trees and money engines and money machines and all kinds of things to make money. And they don't really, likewise, care too much about the purpose. So, if their brain really stays on that money making side, then they'll just stay on there forever, just collecting money, making money. And is there some greater purpose for humanity or some greater purpose in what they're doing? That's not the point. The point is to make money. And sure, every startup founder, says, oh, trying to save the world, but, they're really just trying to, save up for a new Maserati or something like that. I mean, it's what entrepreneurs think about. Okay. And of course, right, I'm not saying this is for all, but I'm just saying if you stay in these zones, so if you stay in the innovator zone or you stay in the entrepreneurial zone, then you can end up in these kind of valleys where you don't get to mix the two. And maybe when you were young, it was about both. And maybe as you got older, or maybe when you started, if you started older, it was about both. And then as you continued on, you kind of went one way or the other way. So this actually, you can see it in the way that the world is unfolding. We have Popular Science magazine. This is an old copyright, but we see it all the time. They're talking about like the future is now, and we're gonna be 3D printing hearts and doing all this stuff. And we keep wondering, like, where's the 3D printed heart coming, right? I thought we'd all be in flying cars. I thought, all these things. And my feeling is it's not actually technically impossible to do some of the innovations that we keep seeing in things like popular science or keep hearing about in the future. The problem is that you have very few intersections between the scientists or the innovators and the entrepreneurs. So on the flip side, you got the entrepreneurs, and they're like, hey, let's make fidget spinners because you can make a lot of money. It's super cheap to make, and all we got to do is get them to go viral, and we'll make some money quick, and it'll be a fad, it'll go away, but we'll make money, right? Yes, I know later on people said, oh, it's good, calm kids down, and there's they try to find a greater purpose in it, right? I mean, that's true, right? Some greater purposes were unearthed, but when they were making it, it was not for a greater purpose. It was, hey, this is a good way to make a lot of money. And when it went viral, this is a good way to make a lot of money quick. And so we end up with these innovations, right, that maybe aren't as impactful, as we'd hope. And we miss out on the innovations like 3D printed hearts and everything that are. And I started out in the university setting. So I was at the University of Michigan when I started my entrepreneurial career. I didn't start young in life. I wasn't, I had no lemonade stands as a child. So I'm on the, if people say, the older side of starting a new journey. So I started when I was in grad school, at the end of grad school. So not in the beginning of grad school, at the end of grad school. And I kind of thought I was doing the entrepreneurial journey, but I was really thinking more so like an innovator still and acting like an innovator on top of it. I hadn't quite moved over into the acting like an entrepreneur. And so I had a lot of misadventures in entrepreneuria. And so I'm just going to go through, some of them as it applied to the innovator side of me. So I'm CEO and founder of a company called MemStim LLC. And this company makes electrode leads for neurostimulator devices. And basically, think of medical implants that you put in different parts of the body that's essentially stimulate the brain. Now, maybe they stimulate the brain directly, like a deep brain stimulator that's here with Parkinson's tremors. In other words, you put the electrode, the wires directly into the brain and stimulate it. Or maybe they stimulate the brain indirectly through a nerve, like with cochlear implants, where it goes inside the cochlea and it stimulates the auditory nerve, which then goes to the brain. But all of these technologies, whether you call them neurostimulators, Neuralink, right? Elon Musk company, they call, brain machine interfaces. They have all kinds of brain implants. They have all kinds of names for this technology. We don't make it for sport or for fun. We make it for medical implants, but you do have companies like Neuralink that are popping up and coming up and saying, hey, could I control your cell phone easier with this? Could we do some things where we think, sort of say what we want to do, and it controls technology? And there's, I guess, some ethical issues with that, perhaps. But all that goes to say, there's a wide range of uses for this technology, because everything we say, we think, we do comes from, our nervous system, and that includes our brain. And really, it's just electrical information being generated within that system. And that's like an electrical highway. It's basically a really large computer is what our body is. And if we could hack that highway with these devices and start inputting other electrical information, then we can control what the body does, what the body thinks, right? How the body moves, all of that can be controlled just with electrical information. I started out with my dissertation work on cochlear implants. So I was, working on restoring hearing. The technology already existed. It basically is, here's the electrode array that's going through the cochlea. You have a computer chip that we call a pulse generator that's implanted, under the skin in a little kind of indent that they make in the skull. And that computer chip creates electrical signals that go to this electrode array, which is a bundle of wires. And those electrical signals stimulate the auditory nerve. And then to get those electrical signals, actually the pattern that's supposed to be used make that pattern, they use an external microphone, which picks up the sound, picks up the speech, and translates it into a code that gets transmitted wirelessly through this link here, and then transmitted into a digital code, which ends up going out to the cochlear electrode array. I was really excited about this from an innovator's perspective. Again, was not thinking about starting a company, but I did have a little bit of, I wanted to be purposeful to a certain extent. So I was not just totally in love with my innovation. And I saw that one of the biggest problems in the manufacturing side and the access to the technology was that it was hand assembled. So that electrode array is assembled by hand. It's people literally looking under a microscope, micro welding wires that are less than 1/4 the diameter of a strand of human hair. So it's very tedious, very expensive. I liken it to custom jewelry making. And what we wanted to do was automate the whole process. So we wanted to reduce the cost, reduce the labor that was needed, and open it up to emerging markets, because people do not have access to cochlear implants in many countries, including India, China, many African countries don't have access to it, or there's limited access to it. So you can go to South Africa in some cases, but again, it's very limited access. The technology is so expensive, it's not really made for those markets. And so now there's a huge drive from those governments to make the technology more accessible. So I created all this wonderful, innovative stuff on my own. I'm not even going to go into most of this. Was making my own integrated circuit. So I actually went in, laid it out, sent it off to a chip manufacturer, had them make it. I was putting rings on the device. I was, just doing fancy stuff because it was innovative and it was cool. It was going to make great publications. And why not? Because we could do it. But when I actually formed the company, and I, said, hey, let me get 2 MBA students. Let's try and pitch something, right? They didn't actually end up becoming real founders of the company, but at that point, we were still at the university. It was more of an educational endeavor. And we formed the idea of the company. I kind of had the idea. I came to them and said, hey, can you guys put this into a business plan? And, let's go pitch it. And so we pitched it and won all these pitch competitions. And, I tried to mix the innovation with the entrepreneurship. And thought, okay, I finally did it. I finally got it. I'm not in love with my technology anymore. I'm in love with the business proposition. So I thought, okay, well, let's go talk to some real customers. So I went to Advanced Bionics, and I was swiftly told that the innovation was not commercializable because we hadn't considered the things that needed to be approved by the Food and Drug Administration. In other words, I had all these wonderful features and all this cool stuff going on. Like, it was a really small device, custom ASIC and everything, but I hadn't stopped to think about, well, how do you actually get it into the body in terms of the material choices? Are they going to have longevity in the body? Like, yeah, they work in animals, we demonstrate that here, but there's a big difference between animals and human beings. And I quickly found out that companies like Advanced Bionics, they're in the entrepreneurial space. So all I think about is money. So they like the idea because it was going to lower their labor costs, but they didn't like the idea because there was no way that they were going to get the federal government to approve it unless we changed all of our materials. So what I did was I stopped falling in love with my innovation And I said, okay, if I didn't think about this in terms of like features, and I just thought about it in terms of creating a manufacturing process that could be utilized to make these implants, then I would think about it totally different. So in other words, if I innovated on demand and I thought, if the solution requires an innovation, I'll innovate. But if the solution does not require me to be innovative, I'm not going to just innovate for innovation's sake. And that sounds really simple, but a lot of times as innovators, we do innovate for innovation's sake because it's something new and we want to do it. And we want to show that we can do something new because the world needs new things. But actually, the world needs us to take old things and perhaps use them in new ways only for the purpose of bringing something new and useful to humanity. And that was something I had to learn and really kind of wash my old mentality that I got in the academic world out of my mind. And so I started kind of trying to mix the traditional manufacturing process with the innovative stuff we were using. We were using machines that they use at, think like Intel, when you guys see those commercials and people are in the white, we call them bunny suits. We were using all that high-tech equipment, which is very expensive, a lot of toxic chemicals and gases. And at first I kind of made a little leap. I said, well, let me try and use those tools differently. And then finally I was like, I'll be here forever, right? Because those tools are expensive and I need to reduce capital equipment. Those tools actually work by putting expensive materials on the device and then removing, like putting on in bulk, and then you remove everything you don't want to use. And since these are really small devices, you end up wasting a lot of materials. So that's a lot of raw material waste. And the equipment wasn't really scalable. These were $200 million, sometimes $300 million clean room facilities with this whole tool set. And, if we wanted to take this to a company that has no experience with this tool set, it just didn't mix and match. They were like, well, what do we might like the technology, but how are we going to manufacture it? Or for us, I was like, I'm a startup. I'm not going to pay $300 million for a facility just to manufacture. It didn't make sense because the whole point was to lower costs for manufacturing. So what we did was we went to 3D printing. And with 3D printing, we were able to eliminate all of the tools, the expensive tools, and we were able to do with, a $250,000 tool, what we used to take us, several steps and, $30 million worth of tools to do. And that was a huge difference because this tool is also a benchtop tool. It's not the traditional 3D printer that most of you might be familiar with, where you have, plastic filament that you heat up and it melts. And then when the layer hits the surface, it cools. We're actually the opposite. We're using liquid, think about liquid rubbers in a way, silicones. And when you heat them up, they actually solidify. So we have to reverse the whole entire process of traditional 3D printing, come up with our own methods and our own ways so that we can 3D print these liquid rubbers, something that's not often done. And with this printer solution, we were able to minimize our equipment needs. We were able to we still made innovative stuff. We made elastic metal that has really great, resistance and can go in the body and is pretty durable. So again, we innovated on demand. We ended up creating something super innovative that even at the university level, people have not been able to really figure out. We figured it out, but we didn't set out to make something innovative. We just were trying to figure out what's the cheapest and quickest way to make a prototype. And this was the cheapest and quickest way to make a prototype that satisfied the requirements of what we needed the prototype to satisfy. And we didn't worry about what the rest of the world was using in terms of wonderful, innovative, sexy tools. We just thought, what's the tool that we could use? And we ended up, ultimately using something that was innovative and sexy, but that wasn't really our goal. We just were like, let's find the one tool that we can mass produce, like that's scalable. And I'm not really going to go into this, but I did want to show you some of the final devices. These are wires basically, but they're elastic. So these are electrodes that we create out of these wires, and devices like this could sit on the brain and stimulate or record from the brain. I'm not going to go into what all this data means. It's not really relevant to this talk, but the moral of the story is with one machine, on a tabletop, we could create a device like this, and we had gone from several machines, and really the device still didn't work when we had those several machines, because it just wasn't, the material choice was wrong. Everything was wrong. And, but again, we were forced, because we had created a startup, we didn't have time to wait 30 years for academia to get it together. We were like, we got to find a tool today we can use today, that we can scale today, and that we can actually make devices today with, so that we're not beholden to the pace of innovation in academia. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of my innovative / entrepreneurial journey, and kind of rewiring the way that I think about innovation and entrepreneurship. And I guess for Kai, if anyone has any questions, I'll definitely take Q&A.
Dr. Angelique, we did have a few questions in the chat. And actually the most recent one was, how is plastic able to conduct?
Yeah, how, say that again?
How is plastic able to conduct?
Yep. So with traditional 3D printing, you have plastic filament. And with ours, we actually have liquid silicone rubbers. And those silicone rubbers, we embed them with conductive particles. And so they're not plastics, actually. They come out basically like rubbers. And so we make them conductive by putting conductive particles inside of them, like really small nanoparticles inside of them.
Okay, and someone else left a comment that this is sort of a cross between physical and mental health electrode therapy. Is that?
So actually that's becoming more and more true. I'm not familiar exactly to what they're referring to, but just the kind of my understanding from what they're referring to. So these electrodes were used originally for physical conditions. So people are using for individuals that, are paralyzed, or using for individuals that can't see, can't hear. Pacemakers is in the same classification of these devices. So people that have heart issues are using them for that. And but now people are actually starting to use this technology to see if it can treat post-traumatic stress disorder. I had a company reach out to me today, and they have a technology to help with memory loss. So they want to stimulate in certain areas of the brain. And they found that depending where they stimulate, it actually can preserve memory loss up to 18% for those individuals that might be going, through the process of dementia or Alzheimer's. So it is becoming both a physical treatment and a mental, and also an emotional therapeutic treatment. Yeah, people are using, I'm sorry, now I'm reading my own, reading the question. I was looking at that, somebody asked about, shutting off the neurotransmitter in the brain that would stop me from eating. Sarah, it is actually, they do have a device where they're doing that. They're using it for obesity, because so these are not approved, but these are things that areas that people are looking into and that they've been studying. And so, yes, coincidentally, there is a way to use this technology for obesity.
Now, is this, and I heard you allude to it earlier. So people that are using, is this the same type of thing like the neurotransmitters, where people are getting like a chip implanted in their wrist and they can open, doors and things, or is that like a RFID chip? Is that something different, or?
So it's probably very similar to this. I had a colleague, he was working on interfacing these type of chips, like someone would have a prosthetic arm, and they would basically, you need a chip, it's in your brain, and you need another way to communicate to a chip that's over in the arm, and basically trying to see, like, can I control the prosthetic arm through the existing neural pathways that are still there. So maybe my arm is gone from here down, but the nerves from here go to my brain just fine. So if I could put a chip either here, right, or another one, maybe even sometimes in the brain, depending on how they do it, then, I could control that prosthetic arm. So yeah, so there's that definitely is a technology that people are working on as well.
Okay. Now we have a question in the chat that said, how did you get your device FDA approved? Did you piggyback off a similar device that was already approved?
So for us, we actually don't have any of our technology and FDA approved devices just yet. So that's something that we're hoping to have down the pipeline. And to make matters more interesting, we actually don't work with the FDA ourselves. So we make the kind of that bundle of wires that touches the nerves or the neurons and stimulates it, but we don't make the full device. So we would actually work with a partner, and we do try to find partners that in some cases that already have an FDA approved device. So like cochlear implant manufacturers, they already have FDA approval. And so they would just be swapping out, something that exists and has approval with our device. So it might be a supplement, like they have to write a letter to the FDA and let them know, hey, we're doing this. They probably would do some clinical trials because what we're doing is so disruptive. But and then there's other devices like spinal cord stimulators. So they stimulate in the spine for chronic pain. It's especially really important now because of all the things that people saw with people getting addicted to opioids. So that technology actually, they don't do it anymore, but they used to market the wires separate from the rest of the device. So in that case, we could have actually interfaced directly to the FDA, but I think they changed that actually even in the years. So they've changed that. So those are marketed together.
And then a couple of people had the same response in the chat. So how many patents do you hold, Dr. Johnson?
I don't know off the top of my several patents, because we had, when I came out of the university, I had 2 US patents, and then we did international filings on those patents. So you have to, pick the countries where you think, either competitors might be or the market is pretty big. And so with that, we had several filings. And then since then, we've done the company, and we don't have approved filings. We have several patents that are in the application process. We were fortunate that the first ones we filed, they actually got approved really quickly. Like it was only, I think maybe like a two years maybe or something like that, which is pretty quick for a patent. These other ones, there might be a little bit longer. So we'll see, but we feel pretty confident we'll get them. So that's another several patents. And then with those ones, we have the US filings. And then again, you have to do pick several countries that we picked to file them there as well, so that we can have protection, not just here in the US, but in other countries outside of it.
That's excellent. Someone asked, have you all yet figured ways to implant on top of the skin instead of deep inside?
Yeah, people, there's another company that reached out to us that is doing, well, they call them wearables. So they want an electrode array that they would put on the skin, and it would basically detect, different bio, feedback and just different biosignals from the skin. And even when you're recording from the brain, they do have some electrodes, even now today, where they put it on the surface, and they might shave the hair off and they'll put it on the surface of the skin. So they don't put it under the skin, or they don't put it on the brain. And they're able to get electrical recordings from the brain doing that as well. So yeah, so there's definitely ways to get the signals, from the skin side. It just depends on what you're trying to do and how sensitive you need that information to be in terms of, is the signal strong? Is it weak? What are you trying to control? Are you actually trying to stimulate inside for hearing loss, which is different than some of you might be familiar with TENS devices that they even have in some of your therapeutic clinics, like your physical therapy clinics will sometimes have these devices where they take the electrodes and, for rehabilitation, they might, do some light stimulation, on your different parts of your body, because it's been shown to accelerate healing. So yeah, so definitely some external applications for the technology.
Well, the latest comment seems to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, where it's saying there was a doctor, I think at Walter Reed, who was doing surgery on people, and that their example is that the leg was being amputated, that the wearable would stop the nerves, stop messages being sent to the brain. So I guess no phantom pain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like another type of, again, kind of, I was mentioning like they have the chronic pain stimulator. Now some they put in the spine, but again, like a lot of times, even before the most invasive ones, the ones they put in the spine. I mean, no, this is not the spine, this is a different part of the body. But even the ones where it's more invasive, they put in the spine, it always starts with surface stimulation. So they stimulate to block the pain again over the skin, and then, see if you get any effect with that. And then the deeper you put it in, the better the effect. So that's usually why they go to implanting things, under the skin, in the brain, right next, as close as they can get to the nerves and things like that. But it's not always needed.
Now, Dr. Angelique, I was always told that when you're taking care of business, you always keep the main thing the main thing. However, because I know you so well, you have a main thing and 97 side things. So I want to pivot here because and I just think because of the nature of Code Louisville, all of our students are uh, seeking completion and training in some form of coding or in some area of technology. And many of us are seeking now jobs to fulfill this training. But I thought, your talk would be excellent because it also involves entrepreneurship. And we would love, our students to start their own businesses or forge their own trail. Um, can you talk about some of the other areas where you're involved in tech as well? Where it's not necessarily MemSTEM, but where MemSTEM has led you to, like even things that they may not know about, like I always mess the name up. Was
A
the
visionarium. Yep.
Well, Visionarium, but
Yeah.
Russell Business Tech
Mhm.
Innovators?
Yeah, yeah. So we're through Vision. So I created another company, Visionarium, because I saw there wasn't a lot of educational resources for individuals, founders, particularly those who are underserved. And through that company, Visionarium, I've been able to contract with other incubator programs like the Russell Tech Business Incubator. So that's out of AMP. It's a great program. Apply to it if you can. They provide funding and also a lot of educational resources, as well as providing you access to service providers, to business coaches, and the like. And so, Visionarium, we provide business coaches to help people strategically navigate growth for their business to make, kind of the best financial decisions they can make, as well as, how do I scale? How do I, and even simple things like, well, how do I build a marketing team and how do I get all that going?
So, and I just because I've seen it before. So, with in Russell Business Tech, when you're talking about tech, I've seen businesses that were heavily tech involved, and some that were businesses that you don't think about the tech as much. Like, I think one of the early winners, one of the first cohort winners, was like a t-shirt business. But
Yeah.
you got to think about the printing of the t-shirts, all the tech behind all that equipment and machines and the computers and things like that. It's not the traditional coding that we're talking about, but it's a lot more heavily tech involved than getting out a air paint gun and some markers drawn on it. So um
Yeah.
how can I guess the thing is, how can, because a lot of people are trying to find their purpose. Tech is so wide open, and as we come into coding, we think we know what we want to do until we get into it, and then we try to find our way. How was that for you? How did you find your purpose?
So someone else just asked me that question today. I am still finding my purpose. I think, we have multiple things that, we'll be doing in life. Maybe that's why I have so many things that I've done. But to me, it really is having a vision. I'm very much in tune with, hey, where are the ideas for where you're going coming from? So to me, it's like, okay, if I get a vision from God and it's like, hey, go in this direction, do this project, maybe it's never been done before. Maybe, you'll get a lot of pushback from people. But if I feel pretty solid, like, okay, I have a vision, right, that this is going to be impactful and be useful, then that really helps keep your energy going. And there's going to be a lot of ideas you have, but there'll be very few visions. So I have a lot of ideas for things. But to me, the difference between a vision and an idea, or even a vision and a dream, is that, visions, you feel very strongly compelled to do it. So there's a lot of people on this call that have a wide variety of skill sets, from tech to the arts, and I'm talking one person has all these skill sets, right? You might be, thinking like, do I want to become a chef? Do I want to become a graphic designer? Do I want to go, and work for a company doing some, hardware coding? Like, what do I want to do? Because I just have so many talents. And so I think really it's kind of getting in tune, really quieting yourself and really searching for like, okay, what's the vision that I'm getting from God? Where am I to direct and steer me going forward? And then also, hey, sometimes we get it wrong, right? So sometimes I go down the road and I'm like, oh, okay, that didn't work out too well. So not being afraid to fail, because even if you're not sure, just do it. And then if you fail, then you're like, okay, that's one less thing I can cross. I thought that was some grand vision, but looks like it didn't go, where I thought it would go. Not failing, and that's even the same. Like you will fail along the way to achieving a vision that's going to ultimately be successful. So you do have to understand the difference between when you have failed and it's time to walk away from something, and when you have just failed along your way to accomplishing it. And that again kind of goes back to that, what was the grand vision? How fixated are you on it? How persistent are you on it? And are you open to pivoting too?
Someone asked the question, are you more hands-on, project-based, or are you more informative?
In terms of leadership style, I think, is that maybe what they're asking? So I think, is that what they're asking maybe, or?
I would say maybe leadership style, or maybe how you work with potential people in Visionarium. So
Okay. So I'm hands-on in terms of how I work with people in Visionarium. Like I'm very much like, hey, let's, I say you need someone sometimes to walk with you on your journey, not just to give you some advice and say like, Godspeed, like we actually hold your hand through the process. We don't just tell you like, oh, you need an accountant and you need a lawyer. And then here's some recommendations. We actually say, hey, what did your lawyer say to you? Or like, did you have your lawyer review this lease? Okay, did you mention to your lawyer that, da 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 da? Because I don't see that there's this on your lease that you might want to ask them. We're not giving you legal advice, but we can tell you that, hey, in our experience, you might want to have, you check with your lawyer, see if this is relevant to you. So we definitely believe in holding our clients' hands as they build their business, because they're not always going to need someone to hold their hand, but a lot of our business come in either when they're early stage or when they're transitioning. Maybe they've been around for a long time, they've made a lot of money, but they're trying to transition to something new, do something they haven't done before. And so that's where we come into play. In terms of leadership style, I'm very informative, but I'm kind of hands-off. So in my own internal companies, I believe in equipping everybody to be their own leader and really getting the best people and then letting them do what they do. So, I'll have non-traditional track employees. In other words, that didn't come from like a traditional educational system, perhaps, or a traditional career path. And it doesn't matter. We still believe in, hey, we'll train you on what to do and give you the freedom to do it. But we also believe that we're not just letting you flounder though, not just like, okay, well, we're so hands off. We just, you'll figure it out, but we find that if people are curious, they don't want a lot of micromanaging. They want to know that you're there when they need you, but they don't want you breathing down their neck, staring at them, calling them every 10 minutes or even every day sometimes and saying like, hey, where's this at? Where's the project at? Do it this way, do it that way.
um, what was I gonna say? I love that at the beginning of this, you said that, a lot of times innovators innovate for the sake of innovation. And that sometimes entrepreneurs, they chase money because that's how their mind works. They're after the money. And I was always taught growing up that, chasing money is not necessarily a good thing. Chase money for all the wrong reasons. So when I was teaching, I used to put my students through a process we did something called a passion project, which is basically find a problem, fix a problem, and it was up to them or up to their group collaboratively to figure out what are the problem that you found, how would you go about fixing it? In entrepreneurship, in tech, and innovation, how can some of us who have been hardwired, coded to think, with the old standard of thinking that, we have to go to go to work every day, get the 9 to 5, and hopefully we'll have a high enough salary to, provide all of our needs when we know the world doesn't work like that anymore. How
Mhm.
can we find a way out of the doldrums of that to, make it over to your side of the street?
I always said that I was risk averse, but I said that on a talk I gave last week, and somebody came up to me, and they're not the first person that has done this, but they said, "Sounds like you've lived a pretty risky life." So you do have to be willing to launch out, um, but you don't have to launch out, you know, all at once. I mean, at some point you're gonna have to jump off the cliff. So you can't just like hold on to the edge, with your nails and then hope that, like let's say you say I want to launch my own business. Well, you can't always work a full-time job in your business. At some point, you're gonna have to let go of the full-time job and security of that and go work for your business. But my practical kind of guide to that is if you have a passion project or something you're passionate about, that's why I said like think like an innovator. So the passion, right, is the innovative part of you. It's the part that is where you get the enjoyment from it. But then the entrepreneur is to act like an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur knows that if I want to get this out into the world, I have to get money and I have to make money. So I have to get money so I can afford all my expenses to get it out into the world. And the only way that it's going to get out in the world is if people actually are willing to pay for it. Because if they're not willing to pay for it, then it's probably no use to people in the world. And so it kind of shows that you're not making something of use to people. But also, if they're not willing to pay for it, then they can't give you more money so you can make more of it. So the world does work on money, and that's for acting like an entrepreneur, even from day one. Uh, Trying to force yourself to make money with your passion. Visionarium was my passion project. I did it for free as an outreach effort at MEMSTEM for a few years. And then I said, I'm going to force myself to figure out how do I make money off of this. And you got to put yourself in an uncomfortable position, because when you're passionate about something, sometimes you just want to give it away to the world. And you're like, well, if I charge money for this, like, am I, corrupting the system somehow? But then, I realized like, hey, again, if I don't charge money and make money off of this, I actually can't give it to the world in a bigger context. So with me, I can only service so many businesses. But if I get a contract and I make money, I can hire other business coaches and consultants, pay them money, and my company, right? Because it's not just me, it's a company. My company can actually spread my methodology to more and more businesses. But first, I have to figure out a way to bring in that money. And that's where forcing yourself even from day one, if it's like, I like knitting sweaters, well, go down to the farmer's market and see if you can't sell them, at the flea off market. Just think about the money from day one, because it'll also prevent you from making products that nobody can afford. Like some people, just using crafts as an example, because that can get out of control. I have some founders that they make crafts and, I'm talking fashion or something like that. And, they get to the point where they've done so much work on this piece that I said, man, you spent maybe $1,000 on this, but you can only sell it for maybe a few $100, because your passion kind of got away from you. You didn't think about the money. So now no one will ever enjoy this piece unless you're willing to give it away. But when you're so passionate about it, you don't want to give it away. So it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy. So I guess the answer is, don't be afraid to launch out, but think about the sustainability from day one, so that you can basically make a condition where you could totally walk away from what you're currently doing if you want to, and launch into that and afford your lifestyle, maybe even more so than that, afford more than your current lifestyle.
And I'm gonna give an opportunity, because I know I've been kind of just rapid fire giving questions like an interview. I'm gonna ask one more question, then go just to the chat. Anyone else that wants to answer questions? Bill has a great question there. But my last question is, one of the biggest issues that we deal with in Code Louisville is imposter syndrome. And I know that you and I have had some conversations before, just background alone. And we have so many people that come through Code Louisville that have zero coding, zero technology background at all. How did you have to deal with imposter syndrome, or how do you, I guess, kind of combat that in the fields that you're navigating now, especially since you're coaching young tech entrepreneurs?
So yeah, definitely. I, still deal with imposter syndrome, but one of the ways that I combat it is reminding myself, and I was saying this actually last week to somebody else asked me this question about imposter syndrome, and I was saying, you know, there's lots of people that could do what I'm doing better than me, but there's only one person that God gave the vision to. So I'm the only one that has the vision. And it's not a matter of like, oh, I'm the only one who has a vision. And people, I know this from experience because I've hired people and I'll like have the vision and I'll try to give it to them and they can get some part of it, but they'll be like, it's not gonna work. And I'm like, no, it'll work, right? Like, can't you see it? Can't you see how this will work? And they can't see it because the vision didn't come to them. So when I think about imposter syndrome, it's like, again, people could be more skilled than you, but nobody can see the vision that you have. Everybody's given a unique vision or a unique set of visions, and no one will see that vision the same way. Even if you can draw it, you can put a pitch deck together. There's an element of vision that is not actually visual. It's a little bit of instinctual. You can talk to anybody. You can talk to people that, of course, I happen to be a licensed minister, so you're always going to get a little Jesus with me, right? But you can talk to people that are atheists, right? You can talk to most startup founders, regardless of what they believe or don't believe, will tell you the same thing. It's very hard. Like they got some vision, they got something in their mind of what this was, and they could not convey the entirety of it to people. But it's important to convey as much as you can. You got other people energized, but there were many points where people could not see the vision. And so they were trying to drive towards something that maybe other people telling them, hey, it's not going to work. It's not going to be successful. But when you see the vision yourself and you see it kind of unfold in your own mind, whether other people can see it or not, it's inconsequential. You are obligated to fulfill the vision. So again, when I think of imposter syndrome, I start getting down like, oh, other people could do this better than me, or maybe I'm not the best founder, the best entrepreneur. I have to remind myself that I don't have to be the best. I just have to be the one that was chosen. So, God chose me to do it. I guess he'll equip me to do it. Right. And I look around and I don't see anybody else trying to do what I'm doing to the level that I'm doing it. Right. They might be trying other ways, but they're not trying the way that I'm trying. Right. That's what makes it innovative. And they seemingly have no interest actually. And they don't even think what I'm doing is going to be successful. So that's just remind yourself of that. Like, what's the vision? And just look around, practical reality. Well, there's lots of founders, but there's not a lot of founders doing what I'm doing. So there's just one founder doing what I'm doing. So even for yourself, just think about that. There's only one person who's doing what you're trying to do in most cases, even if you feel like you're failing at it, that's okay. Fail up.
Laura Owens put in a very nice compliment. She said the vision thing puts everything in perspective for me. With her dyslexic thinking superpower, she has many ideas, but not all of them have the vision along with them. So thank you for telling us that.
Yeah.
And then Bill added in a question, Bill Montgomery added in a question, said, are there any books that you have found useful in your business growth and or your growth as an entrepreneur?
I'm gonna have to end on this one because I am running late to another meeting. I've kind of jam-packed myself in, unfortunately, today.
Yeah,
But
tell us about it.
for me, so this is an odd answer to this question, but promise me if you roll with it, it actually works. So I always say like the book of Nehemiah is a really good book. It's in the Bible, it's in the Old Testament. It's not often preached from really, anything like that. So if you're a churchgoer, you might not have heard it. Even if you heard like Christian stuff on TV or something, you may not have heard it, but it's a really good study on leadership and on trying to do something when you got a vision, you have passion, but you don't have resources, and how, through the grace of God, motivating people, knowing that there's going to be challenges, ignoring your haters. There's a lot of things that happen. It's basically about, this really just civil servant, Nehemiah. So that also makes it interesting because it's a book in the Bible. It's not named after a prophet, or anything like that. It's not, there's just, no apostle, no disciple, just Nehemiah was just a servant, of basically the cupbearer for the king. And he came, right, from a essentially war-torn nation, right? So at that time, Israel's, war-torn, they don't have any walls, up in the city anymore. And, he has some family over there, and they ask, hey, he asked them, hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, it's terrible, like we don't have any walls. And maybe no wall sounds no big deal to us, but that means that they're totally exposed and they've already been, basically savage. So, he basically then gets really passionate about rebuilding the walls of the city, even though he's in a whole different part, of the world. And he goes on this journey, which I'm not, don't have time to go into, but basically just goes on this, mission where that starts with him asking, a king who is now has basically no allegiance actually to rebuilding the walls of for them. But, he ends up, first things first, getting the funding. Gotta get the funding. And so he's, working with God, like, hey, God, give me the, make it, please make it work. That, this king is gonna give me money. So give me the money, give me the funding. So he gets the funding, gets the resources, get the freedom to move, right? To leave his job basically and go do this. But along the way, he's just met with all these challenges, people that don't want him to rebuild the wall, neighboring territories, and they're just hating on him, and they're trying to distract him from the work and trying to convince the people that it could be rebuilt, because as much as they wanted to be rebuilt, they had given up hope. They didn't see the vision. It talks about the importance of when you have a vision, something you're trying to build, of working it out in isolation first, and then sharing it with your team, so that when you share it with your team, you can convey a complete story, the complete vision, right? You're not trying to work it out with them. So there's just a lot. So I encourage you to read the book of Nehemiah. There's actually been several different, I can't remember off the top of my head, but several different leadership books that have popped up over the years that use the book of Nehemiah as this like context to leadership too. So.
All right, Angelique, thank you so much. I know you're busy. I know that you have to run. Thank you so much. I guess, how can anyone reach out to you, get hold of you if they have any further questions?
You can, you guys can follow me at The Visionaire. Coincidentally, it's probably the best way to get me to respond, because I'm not very active on IG, but I do check my IG. So you can follow me at The Visionaire on Instagram. You can also, I'm just under Angelique Johnson, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I don't check my messages that often. But those are probably the best ways to get hold. My email inbox is a mess. I cleared out today, and I'm like apologizing to people like, oh yeah, I know you sent this in August, but sorry, I'm just now seeing it. So I have too many emails to keep up with, but those are good ways to connect.
All right, so everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to our guest speaker Monday series. Again, the incomparable Dr. Angelique Johnson, thank you so much.
Cool, thank you. Talk to you guys. Bye.
All right. All right, everyone.